Fairy tale: The Goblin and the Grocer. Once upon a time, there was a grocer who had his shop on the ground floor, lived on the first floor, and rented out his attic to a very hard-working student. The grocer owned a house goblin. You know why the house goblin stayed with the grocer? Because he would always give him jam and a big lump of butter during Christmas. The grocer could afford it. The student did not have anything or anybody that belonged to him. One evening, the student came through the back door and asked the grocer for some cheese. And the grocer very happily gave him a piece of cheese. The cheese was rolled in a piece of paper. The student said, "Good evening, ma'am." And the grocer's wife also said, "Good evening, my boy. How are you doing?" You know, the old lady had the special gift of talking, and her tongue was a magic tongue, and only the goblin knew about it. The student suddenly looked at the paper in which the cheese was wrapped in. You know, there was beautiful poetry in it. The grocer looked at the student and he said, "There's more of these poems. An old lady gave it to me and I gave her some coffee for the book. If you want, I can give it to you for 8 pennies." The student said, "Oh, please, I need the book. You are a very practical man, grocer, but you do not know anything about poetry. You just know as much as this waste paper tub knows about the poetry," said the student. The grocer and the student took it as a joke. But the goblin did not like what the student said. He was very angry that he spoke to his master that way. That night, when everybody went to sleep, the goblin took the grocer's wife's tongue. And you know, you put the tongue on anything, it'll start speaking. It'll start telling its thoughts. And so the goblin put the magic tongue on the waste paper tub. And the goblin asked, "Hey, waste paper, what do you know about poetry?" And the waste paper said, "Oh, I know so much about poetry. You know, it is always printed at the end of the newspaper when they don't have anything to print. Sometimes people cut it out too. You see, I know so much about poetry." And the goblin put the tongue on the coffee grinder, the till, on whatever it could find, and everybody agreed with the waste paper tub. And you see, we always follow the majority, whether it is right or wrong, isn't it? And so the goblin agreed with the majority. Before the grocer's wife could wake up, he put the tongue back and he decided, "I'm going to go tell the student that he was very wrong about his master and the waste paper tub, and there's no use reading poetry." And he climbed up the stairs. And when he looked through the keyhole, there was a candle burning in the student's room. And he saw something really, really very beautiful. above the student's head grew a beautiful leaf that spread out its branches above the student's head. And each leaf was very alive, and each flower was like a beautiful girl's face, some with deep sparkling eyes, some with clear blue eyes. And each fruit was like a sparkling, shining star. And he heard beautiful music. The goblin had never dreamt of such a beautiful thing in his life, and he yearned to stay with the student. He changed his thought about poetry. After some time, the candle was put off, and the goblin came down the stairs and went to his room. I would love to be with the student, but he cannot give me jam. So I think I better be with the grocer himself. And every day he would go to the student's attic and peep through the keyhole and enjoy the beautiful music and the beautiful sight. It went on for quite some time. Even when it was very cold winter, he was so addicted to listening to the beautiful poetry that the student read that he would climb up the stairs, go to the attic, and once he finished reading his poems, the goblin would come back to his warm, cozy bed. One day, from somewhere outside, there was too much of hullabaloo. The watchman was screaming and whistling, "Fire! Fire! Fire!" The grocer did not know whether there was fire in his house or somewhere outside his house. The grocer's wife took her gold earrings. The grocer took his stock books and cash. The goblin quickly climbed the stairs and went to the attic. And he took the poetry book and put inside his red cap and clutched it very tightly. He saw the student standing by the window and watching outside. There was blazing fire in the house opposite. The goblin thought, I have treasured the most special thing that is in this shop. It's nothing else but the poetry book. Sitting high above on the rooftop, the goblin realized that his heart belonged to the student, that he will stay with the student. With this thought, he was watching the fire blazing red. Once the fire was out, he came back to his senses. He said, I will divide myself between the student and the grocer. I love the poetry and the student, but you see, he cannot give me jam. Isn't it the same case with most of us? We always keep returning to the grocer. First, we need to get our tummies filled. If we have to get our little brains filled with food. This is Abhi telling stories for Story Island. Good night, sweet dreams.